think anytime you sit down to watch a Ridley Scott film, you're going to be asking yourself the question, are you not entertained? Because the man makes good movies. They're not always going to be Oscar winning hits, but they are always entertaining films, such as was the case with Gladiator II, which begs the question, did it really need a sequel? Which is the answer to that is probably no. But at the same time, it was an interesting story to tell, and it gave quite a few actors the chance to chew up the scenery and give some really good performances, even if they weren't necessarily Oscar winning performances. And that's kind of like, in a nutshell, if you don't want to watch the rest of the review, that's kind of how I think you could describe this movie is as an entertaining film that didn't necessarily need to be made, but was nevertheless a fun movie to sit down and watch. We actually split this into two evenings because we were watching this late in the evenings, and so I was falling asleep halfway through the first half, and then we finished it up tonight. And I wanted to get the review out while it was still fresh in my mind. So essentially, and I'm gonna spoil the whole thing, but I mean the movie's been out for more than a year now, so if you haven't watched it yet, like me, I, again, if you don't want things spoiled, this is your only spoiler warning because I am going to talk about the whole thing, including the story. I don't do spoiler free on my channel, so you've been warned. Essentially, he is Lucius, who is the son of the daughter of Marcus Aurelius, who was the emperor in the first film, who was killed by his creepy son. And he was a little boy at the time. And essentially, they kind of hide that fact through the early parts of the film, which I kind of feel was, I, don't, I it just felt tropey, if that makes sense. Um, but his mother makes a return. She's here from the original film, as is the old man whose name I forget. He's the white bearded senator. Um, he did that show with Ian McKellen where they both played, where they were a gay couple living together. Blanking on his name right now. Um, anyway, a couple of familiar faces returning from the original film. Um, I think that out of all of the characters in this movie, the only character whose arc I actually really felt was like for me moving was Pedro Pascal's character, who he's essentially playing this jaded general who's tired of being sent off on these missions to conquer lands just for money. Um, and we find Rome 16 years later, with where the movie picks up, ruled by a pair of twin emperors who are just basically batshit crazy. And Pedro Pascal's general is just off pillaging because that's what the emperors have sent him to do is to pillage. But he's tired of it. And he goes off on this mission. We find him living off, and again, you don't find out who he is until later on. So the premise here is that he starts off the film as this defending soldier who's defending against Rome. His wife gets killed in the battle. He gets captured, gets turned into a gladiator. You have Denzel Washington playing this other batshit crazy guy who is the guy who buys him as a gladiator and puts him into the arena. And from there, it's all about basically him being a good enough warrior that he survives his way up through the ranks, while the general decides that he wants to depose the twin emperors. So there's politics and intrigue, and eventually his mother discovers that he's still alive. Um, and at the same time, Denzel Washington's character discovers that he is the son of, he's actually the Prince of Rome. And he gets this crazy idea in his head to turn the emperors against each other, get rid of this guy in the arena, and take over as it's one of the. I honestly can't think of any other time, other than maybe Training Day, where I've seen Denzel Washington play like a really bad guy, like an actual bad guy. And he ate it up. He chewed up the scenery in this film. Like I would almost call this a campy performance by Denzel, because he was just so over the top as this extravagantly rich, corrupt guy whose only objective through the whole movie is to get as much power as possible and to try to figure out how to become, you know, one of the most powerful people, if not the most powerful person in Rome. Um, and of course, he gets his just desserts in the end. Um, and Pedro Pascal's character has a rather heroic finale. He surprisingly enough makes it all the way to the end. I again going back to what I was said at the beginning of this review. This is definitely one of those films that I don't think it needed to be made, but it's okay. It's great that it was, and it has some entertaining aspects on its own. But I do think they tried to draw a little bit too much upon the legacy of the first film to try to make this work, to try to force it to work. Quick commercial break, everyone, to celebrate and give thanks to all of these amazing people who keep me on the air full time. Really appreciate the support. All you got to do is join as a member. You get access to private videos. You can also do super thanks on any upload or super chats and stickers on any live stream or premiere you see. And beyond that, don't forget we're multi-streaming over on Twitch now, so you can support over there as well. Thanks so much to everybody. Let's get back to the video at hand. Ridley Scott does amazing sword and sandal epics. Like if you've never seen like especially the extended edition of Kingdoms of Heaven, oh my God, or the extended edition of the Robin Hood film he did, also with Russell Crowe. Those are phenomenal movies, as was the original Gladiator. This, not so much. This definitely feels like it was like they definitely used some of the same music from the first film because they want to drive it home that this is throwing back to that first film. There's I would say probably half a dozen, maybe a little bit more, um, recollection shots with Russell Crowe's character, while at the same time playing music from the first film. Um, so they really want to sort of try to tie it back to that original film in ways that felt at times a little forced. And I wonder if the movie wouldn't have been better off on its own if they didn't try to do that at all. But I understand, they want to bring seats, put butts in seats and sell tickets to something like this. So it wasn't a bad film. One of the things you can always say about Ridley Scott's films is that the sets are absolutely freaking amazing. They build full sets for everything, whether it's Prometheus and doing alien films or doing like a sword and sandal epic. Like the sets are always absolutely magnificent. The costuming is great. The fight scenes were good that were there. Um, there was more CGI in this than there was obviously in the first film. Like the shark sequence in the arena was the only moment in the film where I kind of scratched my head. I looked at Chris and I was like, "Really, sharks in the arena?" Like I know that historically speaking, we know that the Colosseum could be flooded, but were sharks something that actually happened historically? I don't actually know the answer to that. But I was sitting here going, how would they get sharks to the arena in those times? Like, I guess, maybe I'm just thinking too small-minded, but the sharks were CGI'd, and then the monkeys that he fought at the very beginning were all CGI'd. And not bad CGI, just you could tell it was CGI, and it was just like, okay, I feel like maybe they could have done something other than CGI'd monkeys to make that fight feel epic. At the end of the day, it was a popcorn film that I don't feel like I wasted my time watching, but I definitely feel like it tried to hang too hard on the laurels of the first film, and it's just nowhere near as good. The first one was definitely an Oscar award winning and Oscar worthy film, and this was not. This was just a solid action adventure film set during the Roman Empire. And I just kind of wish that it would have been more. That I was left with that feeling at the end of it because I've seen some Ridley Scott films that were just absolutely like Kingdom of Heaven as an example. We watched that film every couple of years. Chris and I watch it. The Robin Hood film we watch every couple of years, like of the original Gladiator. Like I like Ridley Scott films. Um, this will not be one that I ever care to rewatch, probably. Love to hear your thoughts. Drop them down below. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. I review lots of films and TV shows, video games, and beyond, and we do streams every single day on YouTube and Twitch. See you in the next one.